Please subscribe, like and share this content. It means a lot to us. Thank you in advance. U.C.C. Article 9, Secured Transactions, Part 3. Perfection and Priority, Subpart 3. Priority. Paragraph 9 317. Interests that take priority over or take free of security interest or agricultural lien. A. Conflicting security interests and rights of lien creditors. A security interest or agricultural lien is subordinate to the rights of 1. A person entitled to priority under Section 9 322, and 2. Except as otherwise provided in subsection E. A person that becomes a lien creditor before the earlier of the time A. The security interest or agricultural lien is perfected, or B. One of the conditions specified in Section 9203, B3 is met and a financing statement covering the collateral is filed. B. Buyers that receive delivery. Except as otherwise provided in subsection E. A buyer, other than a secured party, of tangible chattel paper, documents, goods, instruments, or a certificated security takes free of a security interest or agricultural lien if the buyer gives value and receives delivery of the collateral without knowledge of the security interest or agricultural lien and before it is perfected. C. Lessees that receive delivery. Except as otherwise provided in subsection E. A lessee of goods takes free of a security interest or agricultural lien if the lessee gives value and receives delivery of the collateral without knowledge of the security interest or agricultural lien and before it is perfected. D. Licensees and buyers of certain collateral. A licensee of a general intangible or a buyer, other than a secured party, collateral other than tangible chattel paper, tangible documents, goods, instruments, or a certificated security takes free of a security interest if the licensee or buyer gives value without knowledge of the security interest and before it is perfected. E. Purchase money security interest. Except as otherwise provided in sections 9 320 and 9 321, if a person files a financing statement with respect to a purchase money security interest before or within 20 days after the debtor receives delivery of the collateral, the security interest takes priority over the rights of a buyer, lessee, or lien creditor which arise between the time the security interest attaches and the time of filing. Paragraph 9 318. No interest retained in right to payment that is sold. Rights and title of seller of account or chattel paper with respect to creditors and purchasers. A. Seller retains no interest. A debtor that has sold an account, chattel paper, payment intangible, or promissory note does not retain a legal or equitable interest in the collateral sold. B. Deemed rights of debtor if buyer's security interest unperfected. For purposes of determining the rights of creditors if, and purchasers for value of an account or chattel paper from a debtor that has sold an account or chattel paper, while the buyer's security interest is unperfected, the debtor is deemed to have rights entitled to the account or chattel paper identical to those the debtor sold. Paragraph 9 319. Rights and title of consignee with respect to creditors and purchasers. A. Consignee has consignor's rights, except as otherwise provided in subsection B, for purposes of determining the rights of creditors if, and purchasers for value of goods from a consignee. While the goods are in the possession of the consignee is deemed to have rights entitled to the goods identical to those the consignor had or had power to transfer. B. Applicability of other law. For purposes of determining the rights of a creditor of a consignee, law other than this article determines the rights and title of a consignee while goods are in the consignee's possession if, under this part, a perfected security interest held by the consignor would have priority over the rights of the creditor. Paragraph 9 320. Buyer of goods. A. Buyer in ordinary course of business. Except as otherwise provided in subsection E, a buyer in ordinary course of business, other than a person buying farm products from a person engaged in farming operations, takes free of a security interest created by the buyer's seller, even if the security interest is perfected and the buyer knows of its existence. B. Buyer of consumer goods, except as otherwise provided in subsection E. The buyer of goods from a person who used or bought the goods for use primarily for personal, family, or household purposes takes free of a security interest, even if perfected, if the buyer buys 1. Without knowledge of the security interest, 2. For value, 3. Primarily for the buyer's personal, family, or household purposes, and 4. Before the filing of a financing statement covering the goods. C. Effectiveness of filing for subsection B. To the extent that it affects the priority of a security interest over a buyer of goods under subsection B, the period of effectiveness of a filing made in the jurisdiction in which the seller is located is governed by section 9316 A and B. D. Buyer in ordinary course of business at wellhead or minehead. A buyer in ordinary course of business buying oil, gas, or other minerals at the wellhead or minehead or after extraction takes free of an interest arising out of an encumbrance. E. Possessory security interest not affected. Subsections A and B do not affect a security interest in goods in the possession of the secured party under section 9313. Paragraph 9321. Licensee of general intangible and leasee of goods in ordinary course of business. A. Licensee in ordinary course of business. In this section, licensee in ordinary course of business means a person that becomes a licensee of a general intangible in good faith, without knowledge that the license violates the rights of another person in the general intangible, and in the ordinary course from a person in the business of licensing general intangibles of that kind. A person becomes a licensee in the ordinary course if the license to the person comports with the usual or customary practices in the kind of business in which the licensor is engaged or with the licensor's own usual or customary practices. B. Rights of licensee in ordinary course of business. A licensee in ordinary course of business takes its rights under a non-exclusive license free of a security interest in the general intangible created by the licensor, even if the security interest is perfected and the licensee knows of its existence. C. Rights of leasee in ordinary course of business. A leasee in ordinary course of business takes its leasehold interest free of a security interest in the goods created by the lessor, even if the security interest is perfected and the leasee knows of its existence. Paragraph 9322. Priorities among conflicting security interests in an agricultural liens on same collateral. A. General priority rules. Except as otherwise provided in this section, priority among conflicting security interests and agricultural liens in the same collateral is determined according to the following rules. 1. Conflicting perfected security interests and agricultural liens rank according to priority in a time of filing or perfection. Priority dates from the earlier of the time of filing covering the collateral is first made or the security interest or agricultural lien is first perfected, if there is no period thereafter when there is neither filing nor perfection. 2. A perfected security interest or agricultural lien has priority over a conflicting unperfected security interest or agricultural lien. 3. The first security interest or agricultural lien to attach or become effective has priority if conflicting security interests and agricultural liens are unperfected. B. Time of perfection. Proceeds and supporting obligations. For the purposes of subsection A1, 1. The time of filing or perfection as to a security interest in collateral is also the time of filing or perfection as to a security interest in proceeds, and 2. The time of filing or perfection as to a security interest in collateral supported by a supporting obligation is also the time of filing or perfection as to a security interest in the supporting obligation. C. Special priority rules. Proceeds and supporting obligations. Except as otherwise provided in subsection F, a security interest in collateral which qualifies for priority over a conflicting security interest under section 9327, 9328, 9329, 9330, or 9331 also has priority over a conflicting security interest in 1. Any supporting obligation for the collateral, and 2. Proceeds of the collateral if A. The security interest in proceeds is perfected, B. The proceeds are cash proceeds or of the same type as the collateral, and C. In the case of proceeds that are proceeds of proceeds, all intervening proceeds are cash proceeds, proceeds of the same type as the collateral, or an account relating to the collateral. D. First to file priority rule for certain collateral. Subject to subsection E and except as otherwise provided in subsection F, if a security interest in chattel paper, deposit accounts, negotiable documents, instruments, investment property, or letter of credit rights is perfected by a method other than filing, conflicting perfected security interest and proceeds of the collateral rank according to priority in time of filing. E. Applicability of subsection D. Subsection D applies only if the proceeds of the collateral are not cash proceeds, chattel paper, negotiable documents, instruments, investment property, or letter of credit rights. F. Limitations on subsections A through E. Subsections A through E are subject to 1. Subsection G and the other provisions of this part, 2. Section 4210 with respect to a security interest of a collecting bank, 3. Section 5118 with respect to a security interest of an issuer or nominated person, and 4. Section 9110 with respect to a security interest arising under Article 2 or 2A. G. Priority under agricultural lien statute. A perfected agricultural lien on collateral has priority over a conflicting security interest in or agricultural lien on the same collateral if the statute creating the agricultural lien so provides. Paragraph 9323. Future advances. A. When priority based on time of advance, except as otherwise provided in subsection C, for purposes of determining the priority of a perfected security interest under Section 9322 A.1, perfection of the security interest dates from the time an advance is made to the extent that the security interest secures an advance that 1. Is made while the security interest is perfected only, A. Under Section 9309 when it attaches, or B. Temporarily under Section 9312 E, F, or G, and 2. Is not made pursuant to a commitment entered into before or while the security interest is perfected by a method other than under Section 9309 or 9312 E, F, or G. B. Lien creditor. Except as otherwise provided in subsection C, a security interest is subordinate to the rights of a person that becomes a lien creditor to the extent that the security interest secures an advance made more than 45 days after the person becomes a lien creditor unless the advance is made 1. Without knowledge of the lien, or 2. Pursuant to a commitment entered into without knowledge of the lien. C. Buyer of receivables. Subsections A and B do not apply to a security interest held by a secured party that is a buyer of accounts, chattel paper, payment intangibles, or promissory notes, or a consignor. D. Buyer of goods. Except as otherwise provided in subsection E, a buyer of goods other than a buyer in ordinary course of business takes free of a security interest to the extent that it secures advances made after the earlier of 1. The time the secured party acquires knowledge of the buyer's purchase, or 2. 45 days after the purchase. E. Advances made pursuant to commitment, priority of buyer of goods. Subsection D does not apply if the advance is made pursuant to a commitment entered into without knowledge of the buyer's purchase and before the expiration of the 45-day period. F. Leasee of goods. Except as otherwise provided in subsection G, a leasee of goods, other than a leasee in ordinary course of business, takes the leasehold interest free of a security interest to the extent that it secures advances made after the earlier of 1. The time the secured party acquires knowledge of the lease, or 2. 45 days after the lease contract becomes enforceable. G. Advances made pursuant to commitment, priority of leasee of goods. Subsection F does not apply if the advance is made pursuant to a commitment entered into without knowledge of the lease and before the expiration of the 45-day period.